So that when we did do the show, or the project, which then we released the 3 albums of the main core ensemble and the string players and everything. This is the last one, the 4th. It was on the last day of the sessions. It had been a really long week, really intense for us, and it was like some challenging vibes between people from just being in such an intense setting for so long. And then you guys walk in, and everyone, I remember even responding after the session, and for the people at the time this will come out will have been able to listen to the music, and I think it's just kind of what the two of you bring wherever you go, which is kind of this light that just radiates into the conscious space of where you enter. But I mean, what I always thought, what I think is really amazing, fascinating about this album, and what was really great about that moment was that it's just really fascinating to hear this group of, experimental rock improvisational musicians, blending with that world experience that you guys bring in, which I know it brings an element of everything. But, I know most of the Laaraji catalog now. I don't really think there is. Do you have another project that was like that at all, where you had like kind of a big band playing around you?
Closest it come to that was an Italian project, My Orangeness, where we were in an isolated barn studio in Italy, and there might have been 6 or 7 other musicians. It was improvisation style.
So similar kind of setup.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but in the NOUS project, I had brought like a huge amount of ideas, which also included just free improvisation for the other groups and the other members in the session. But I also brought all these kind of written out little seed improvisational ideas that then defined like these larger improvisations that became the pieces. But in our session, there was nothing. There was no information. It was totally open and free as it should have been, and it needed to be. We had no idea what was going to happen, and we just flowed with it. And for me, it's amazing to hear like how there's an arc of like a whole piece, and I always find that that's amazing in free improvisation in a way, how that can happen, how the composition just unfolds. How much of your music is like that, Laaraji, like that is really free in composition, or like that you've actually, like how much do you actually often work out a composition before you record it versus just like flowing on like totally like structure, melody, harmony?
The closest I come to that was with song albums, Vision Songs, Volume 1. Even those, the songs unfold like I would unfold a lecture. I have a theme, a sense of where I want to go, but then it's like live interacting and free association. I would say more than 90% of the music that I've been able to share, that have been meaningful to others to listen to, have been on that frequency. Spontaneous, in the moment, feeling, intuitive.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of reminds me of at the end of that session, so we had set up, which we have some video of it, people will be able to see, but the band was kind of sprawled out in the Dreamland Studios up here in upstate New York in an old church, in a giant circle. And the album's called A Circle Celebration, to kind of honor that kind of concept, as well as the NOUS symbol and concepts. But and Laaraji and you two sat in the center, and I sat facing you. And again, like I remember this part quite clearly, that I didn't really know what to expect at all with the session. Because I really didn't know your music at all. I'd never seen you, I don't even know if I'd really heard you. But I remember sitting in front of you, Laaraji, and when you opened up your mouth to sing, I was taken aback in a very strange way, like a way that's very hard to actually communicate, in the sense that there is a kind of power and, I guess, presence in your voice that I hadn't really I think, heard from someone else. And it wasn't because like you have a beautiful voice, but it wasn't because you were like Sam Cooke or something, or like like the great like Marvin Gaye, or like there was something else that was kind of very hard to define. But I remember sitting there, and when you started singing, I all of a sudden felt really small. I really felt like I was in a very large presence, and I felt really tiny. And and I remember at the time, and I spoke to you about it afterwards. It was one of the actually few times in my life where I actually felt like the experience of like a student guru moment, like where I was actually like getting a transmission in a way, or like seeing the master at work in a way. And I actually came up to you and told you something about this right after the session was over. And I said, what you did was amazing. I was just really taken aback. Like, how do you do it? I asked you something like that. How do you sing like that? Or how do you sing so freely? And your response was, I just open up and trust. Oh, yeah. And that was, I have never forgotten that. And I will think that my first teacher in music was a guitar player from South Carolina who was like a hidden Buddha legend, passed away in his 50s. He was like a second father to me. And there's things that he told me I'll never forget, but I'll never forget that moment that when you said that, because I will be learning about it, I think, until if I live to be, however old, 90 or 100 or less. So thank you for that.
Yeah, keep doing it until it feels like you're hitting the sweet spot.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely, I have the moments of course I've had the moments of flow and been there, but vocally though, that's a different thing. Yeah, to see you vocally was my experiences are usually more like in composition, like feeling the flow, like in that flow state in the midst of writing, but in the midst of performing, that's where you've found that spot, I think, a long time ago.
There's once a teacher in one of the New Age conferences that I attended in the 80s said that the power of music is in its suggestion. That's how it suggests. It can suggest where the performer is. It can suggest a painting or a picture. It can suggest the flowing of prana. It can suggest the release of heavy energy. Music can suggest many things, and in that power, it can be considered aligning music. The power of suggestion. And your imagination can assign any suggestion that the imagination can come up with. You can suggest that we're in an infinite vertical field through music. and if the listener takes that, what happens is that the mind stops holding on to linear content and feels a very transcendental freedom, a very transcendental lightness.
Do you feel that has there been any inspiration in your life from the Sufi tradition?
Yes, that Hazrat Inayat Khan,
Yeah.
Sufi. Yes, reading his book, The Music of Life,
I know it well.
really like a Bible. I'm sure it reinforced my thoughts, and it validated and encouraged me at sort of how to deconstruct Western attitudes about what music should be.
When did you first come across that book?
I don't know. I must have been browsing through a library and opened the book and said, hey, I should read more about this, and investing in the book. That's an interesting place to find a book that, do I want to spend this money? But hey, this book is necessary. and you invest in yourself, invest in your unfoldment. So I remember that book was an investment because it was pretty pricey. And I don't usually buy books at random because I don't consider myself to be a reader. I read for information and inspiration, and I don't generally get it from novels. I don't think I've ever read a novel. I might have watched movies, but I read for pick up information that will guide me inwardly and let me do the rest from there. And the music of life, I don't remember passages from the book, but it was a definite point along my journey into freer music.